Hey everyone, this is Chad Calek, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 19, which we are going to discuss the bizarre subculture of the Hollywood elite and all the weird shit that just keeps coming out in the news. And I say this because I woke up this morning to R. Kelly's interview, in which he went bonkers crazy about all the allegations against him, which made me immediately think about Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, and this, sexually depraved, weird subculture of the Hollywood elite that exists and has existed for a long time with impunity, with protection. All of the names I just listed, these are not new stories. These rumors about their behavior have been around forever. And in the case of R. Kelly, he actually went to court and settled out of court a long time ago with a video of him actually having sex with an underage girl. Now, I did not watch that video just because if it was an underage girl, I did not want to see that. But from what I've heard, I know people who have seen the video that came out like 10 years ago, and they're like, yeah, it's R. Kelly, man. So how he walked away from that, I have no idea. And it just got me thinking about the impunity in which these people operate in. And it's crazy that this subculture has existed. And the reason I say subculture is because I do know people within the Hollywood elite that are amazing people, that are awesome, that would never be caught dead in a million years with any of these types of scandals. But only so many of these things could come out before you got to stop and say, what is going on out there in Hollywood? Why are all these people involved in things that, like underage sex rings and things like that? And beyond that, why do they feel as though they're above the law? And what I mean by that is, Kevin Spacey puts out his video as Frank Underwood, which I've talked about before on this podcast, in which he says in the video, in character, of course, you want me back, you need me back, I'm not going to admit what I've done, like things like that, like it's a joke, like it's a game. And I'm telling you, a lot of them think that it is a joke and a game, and they think that they are above the law, and we're going to talk about why that is. And at the end, I'm going to share a really unique story with you of something I experienced that I thought of on an earlier podcast that I wished I would have shared, but I'll share it this time. First and foremost, one thing that blew me away about the R. Kelly interview, if you didn't see it, basically he's being interviewed, and the girl that's interviewing him is asking him about these allegations that have come against him. 4 different women have come forward to say, when I was underage, R. Kelly had sex with me. And I didn't see the Lifetime series Surviving R. Kelly, but I guess it's bad. And they're talking about how R. Kelly is, keeping people chained up in his basement. And these girls have to ask him when they can eat, when they can use the bathroom. Just really disturbing stuff. And R. Kelly's being questioned about this in this interview. And he just goes off. He just starts basically saying everybody is just trying to get my money. They're messing with my life. They're all lying. Everybody's lying. All the videos are not real. Like nothing's real. It's this grand conspiracy to get me, R. Kelly, because they all want my cash. And here's the weird thing. The thing that blew me away, beyond the fact that his publicist felt as though this was a good defense to put him on camera and have him freak out in front of a female who's interviewing him. In his defense, R. Kelly, who is saying that he does not have sex with underage women, his greatest defense at this point is to send not 1, but 2 girls out that are 21 and 23 years old, who are his girlfriends, his polygamous girlfriends he sends out to basically defend him. Now, they live with him together in Trump Plaza. So they live in a Trump hotel all together, in which both these girls say, this is all fake, it's all fabricated. They both say that their parents actually tried to get them to sleep with R. Kelly when they were under the age of 18, so that one day they could extort him, like they are now, reportedly, according to these girls. And they basically go off about how there's no way that R. Kelly, who's 52 years old, would ever sleep with them or any other girls when they were underage. Now, remember, one's 21 and one's 23. And the parents obviously say these girls are brainwashed. Now, what was shocking to me about this is that in R. Kelly's mind, in his mind, this was a good defense. This would win him favor. In his mind, this would set the record straight. Here's both of my extremely young girlfriends to defend my character. Now, I am not against, what anybody wants to do in their bedroom, as long as it's not illegal with underage children, or as long as someone isn't being raped or hurt against their will, right? If it's legal to have two girlfriends and live with them that are of age, so be it. I don't want someone to tell me what I can or can't do socially or sexually, again, beyond the line of legality. So I'm not going to judge somebody else if they want to, lead a life that's different than others. So don't get me wrong here. I'm not condemning him for having an unusual, out of the norm relationship. I'm condemning him for thinking that this was a good way to defend himself. He looked exactly like what the girls' fathers are accusing him of, which is an older man who has brainwashed two younger women. He looked exactly like what he was being accused of. So what would make R. Kelly do this? What would make Kevin Spacey put out a video as Frank Underwood, basically saying he'll do what he wants and people love him, so that's that. He's going to get away with it. On the same day that he was indicted, had to show up in court. What would make these people feel as though they are essentially above the law and live in a world with laws that don't apply to them? And I believe I absolutely know the answer to this question. And I'm saying this because I've lived in this town for close to 20 years, and I've seen every aspect of success, every walk of life, from the busboy who's starving and can't make it to the billionaires that I've worked for. I've seen every aspect of it. And again, I want to point this out before I say this. It's not like anybody that is successful just immediately becomes, these sexual weirdos. Like I said, there's a subculture that exists within Hollywood that acts this way. I've met many successful people that are incredible. So I really, really want to make that point here, that I'm not condemning the entire Hollywood elite. I am saying that you can't deny what is right in front of us, and that there is a sect of the Hollywood elite that leads some very bizarre lives, and they don't have a grip on reality. They really don't. And the reason I think that they don't, it comes down to one thing that encompasses multiple things. Drugs. Okay, first and foremost, I'm talking about physical drugs. If you don't think that drug use is rampant amongst the wealthy, you're crazy. The higher and higher you go up the food chain as far as parties go and meeting people and just hanging out and doing things at leisure for fun, the wealthier and wealthier people get. It's been my experience that the more and more available drugs are. And a lot of that is just the ability to get them. And it's also not having people around to basically put these people in check. Now, again, that doesn't mean that every wealthy person I've been around is doing drugs, but I'm just saying that by and large, when I was, working for a studio, on a movie, or in the music business, on albums, the more and more parties you went to, the more and more social time that you were around, the wealthier the individual was that you were visiting, the more access there was to drugs. And the bottom line is that people that do a lot of drugs, they do them because it changes the chemical makeup of your mind. It literally changes your mind, which changes who you are as a person. You don't experience the world the same way. So the more and more drugs you do, the more and more you're detached from reality. And I think there's a lot of that going on in these really bizarre cases. I think there's a lot of that going on. I mean, who's going to tell Bill Cosby that he can't do whatever drugs he wants to do? How did Bill Cosby even know which drugs would knock girls out so he could rape them? Who's going to tell R. Kelly that he needs to lay off his weed? Who's going to tell R. Kelly that, he can't do, whatever drug he wants to do? No one's going to tell these people to stop. No one. Because almost everybody that are hanging out with these types of individuals are on their payroll. So they're just not going to tell them. So the more drugs you do, especially over a long period of time, the more detached you are from reality. Okay? Now there's two other aspects of success at a grand level that I'm going to talk about that are both drugs as well, and they both have the same effect. And the first is fame. And I have seen this affect people in the best or the worst way. More often than not, it's the worst way. Now, just like all other drugs, fame is a drug because it doesn't create something inside of you. It just amplifies who you really are. It's just like alcohol or pills or anything else. Who you are is going to come out in a pronounced way. Fame feels good. And we live in a world right now where there's so many different levels of fame and so many different subsects of fame. What I mean is, I could walk down the street and 98 people might not know who I am. But if you're into, my films or the paranormal, this sect of the world, I might mean something to somebody. I'm the same way. There's artists that I follow, musicians that I'm certain don't have more than 1,000 fans or even 10,000 fans. But if I saw them, I would freak out. I'd be like, oh my God, that's Woven Hand. Oh my God, I've got to go talk to him. Because of social media, there's all these different layers of fame, right? Now, at the top level of success, fame is a massive, massive thing because a lot comes along with it. The more and more famous you get, first and foremost, the less shit you pay for it. People give you free stuff. The height of my TV fame, it was amazing when Paranormal State was like #1. Everywhere I went, I didn't pay for anything. More than likely, the restaurant I went into, they'd probably know who I was or somebody would point it out. And the meal is on the house, Mr. Calek. I can't tell you how many events I went to where people were giving me gifts, which was amazing to get from fans. But at the same time, everything else is being promised to you for free. At every event I went to, at the height of the Paranormal State fame, people were giving me bottles of Jägermeister. People were offering me drugs. Women were absolutely offering to do whatever you want to them. This is just part of it. And when you take it away, a lot of people freak out. They can't handle it. They can't handle it when they have it, and they can't handle it when it's taken away. And the worst of who they are is going to come out. So if you are, in general, a good person, that's going to be amplified with fame. You're going to really enjoy fame. You're going to really enjoy the access you have to people and the time you have to spend with those people and the special moments and the ability to relate with somebody that you don't know, that you just met, and you're going to appreciate how much they love what you do, and it's going to be very, very special. And if you're a terrible person, you're going to use all that to your advantage. And you're going to use it to basically control people, to control situations, to manipulate people, to get what you want, to make people do things for you. You're going to use it the wrong way. And I've seen it over and over again. And most of the time, fame affects people in a bad way. Now, I've only experienced it to a certain degree. And I can't even imagine what it must be like on a grandiose level if you're like Brad Pitt famous, if you're a worldwide icon, if you're R. Kelly famous, if you're Kevin Spacey famous. Those guys, if they wanted to, and it sounds like they have, could manipulate all kinds of scenarios and do a whole lot of evil if they wanted to. But it starts with the person. I do not believe for 1 second that opportunity suddenly creates a new monster inside you that never existed. Whoever you are, that's going to come out. And I'll tell you what else does that. The last thing, money. Money is power. Money is power. It's freedom and it's power. Now, there are people in the world who, when they have money, and I've met on both sides, who want to help others, who want to empower others with their money. There are people who, want to make a real difference and want to do all kinds of positive things. And then, unfortunately, there are people who get off on controlling people. There are people who love forcing people to do things. There are people who love using their money to manipulate. There are people who love the fact that everyone around them is on their payroll. And in R. Kelly's case, that sounds like that's exactly what happened, where everybody around him, and this is by his own admittance, was on his payroll. And he's whining and crying about it right now. But the reason that they like that is that all of those people will do what they're told. because it goes both ways. For the person that is very wealthy too, they can provide opportunities. So unfortunately, they're also inundated with all kinds of fake friendships and people that don't really care about them. And I've been in that situation, not as a, overly wealthy man, but as a person with connections and contacts where I've met people and befriended people, and I'm being real as a friend, and find out later on that they just wanted to be on the show that I was on, or they wanted to meet an executive I knew, or they wanted to meet an agent that I knew. And then you're like, God, that sucked. I thought they were my real friends, but they just wanted my connections and they want to meet them. So I could see how there's a painful dichotomy there. But again, it goes back to the type of person you are, because I've met people and I know people and work with people every day and have partners with wonderful people that really just want to help and want to empower, and realize that just, taking your money to the grave doesn't do anything for you or anybody else. And they want people to do well and they want to support them. And that's very real. But unfortunately, just like fame, more often than not, money really brings out the worst in people. It makes people controlling and vindictive and angry, and then they can just solve any problem that they want. That's a big thing. When you have an ungodly amount of money, most things in the world can be solved by throwing money at the problem. Most things can be. And that's where I think these guys get lost, like R. Kelly, Cosby, especially Spacey, in thinking that they're going to walk. R. Kelly already did walk by throwing money at a problem. He's not going to walk this time. But I think Spacey, R. Kelly, all these guys, Weinstein especially, they have so much money that they think they can just hire a big enough lawyer and throw enough money at the problem, it'll eventually go away. Because 99.99% of the time, that's exactly what happens. In their life, anything they want, including skating over the law, they can get it. The word no doesn't exist. They can do whatever they want. Now, does that mean they can buy happiness? No, because I think, again, that's internal. That's something you have to have inside of you. You either know what makes you happy and you have that grounded internal compass inside of you, or you don't, and all the money in the world isn't going to put a smile on your face if you're just not a happy person. But these people, a lot of the times, the subculture of the Hollywood elite that I'm talking about, they really do live in a world where the laws typically don't apply to them. Not the laws that we live under, not at all. And lastly, I think the reason that this subculture has been able to survive for so long, while everybody knows about them, is because they all kind of lean on each other. They all work together whether they know it or not. And what I mean by that is they're all connected within work. I guarantee you Harvey Weinstein has met not only Kevin Spacey, well, of course he's worked with him, but R. Kelly and Bill Cosby. They all know each other, right? When you're at the top, there's only so many people that are at the top. You all know each other. You all get involved with each other. You start working on different projects together. And everyone's protecting everybody's secrets. Everyone is protecting everybody's secrets. And remember, when you're that powerful, everybody that's around you is typically on your payroll. So who's going to tell on you? No one's going to do that because, they're going to be out of a gig and be looking for a place to live and, got to figure out how to eat now. And I think this is why forever people have heard about these stories of Harvey Weinstein. They were telling jokes at the Oscars about this just a few years ago. At the Oscars, the host was telling jokes about him pushing himself off on women. People knew about this. R. Kelly, that joke's been going on forever of people, what's his one line? It says, my mind's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes. And he was writing about this stuff. It was that out there in the public, yet nothing was happening to him. I heard about Bill Cosby at least 15 years ago. So how much do you have to do to where rumors about you circulate all the way down to the people that just entered the business? Okay? If you look at the documentary Overnight, which is about Troy Leary, I think his name's Troy Leary, the director of Boondock Saints, at the end of that documentary, although he's not accusing Harvey Weinstein of doing anything sexually, he does outright accuse him of trying to kill him and run him over in a car. He literally accuses him of trying to kill him. It's in the documentary. So think how much crazy shit is going on out here, but yet nobody's doing anything. But thankfully, we've come to a time where these things are being exposed. But the one thing I can tell you, it is a different world when you're that powerful and that successful. They do not live in our world. And the first time I experienced this firsthand wasn't necessarily in a bad way, but it was in a shocking way. Was the first time I came out to Los Angeles with Dana Altman. Dana Altman is the grandson of Robert Altman. Dana directed my first feature film I ever made, The Private Public. And we came out to LA to shop The Private Public around, and Dana had arranged for us to go meet Robert Altman, which I was like, this is going to blow my mind. Robert Altman is like the quintessential independent filmmaker, one of the most important directors of all time. Robert Altman directed The Player, MASH, Popeye, Cookie's Fortune, Gosford Park. I mean, you name it, this guy had been there and done it. So I was like, this is amazing. We're going to go meet Robert Altman. So myself, my good friend Corey Moss, and Dana Altman went out to meet Robert in Malibu. And he lived in this Malibu place that was just so amazing, and it was perfectly Malibu. I mean, it was right up on the water where the front of the place looks super small, and then you realize once you get into it that it just rolls down the hill. This whole house is built down the hill in rolling sections down to the ocean. But we walk in right away, and the first thing I notice is everything in the house is white. And when I say everything is white, I mean you can't find a thing in the house that isn't white. Like, I've never seen a house like this where everything is white. The chairs are white. The metal around the TVs somehow is white. Every aspect of the couches are leather and white. Just white everywhere. And my first thought was, this is the most impractical thing I've ever seen. How could you live in a white house and not get it dirty? How is that possible? So I go in and I sit down on the couch with Corey, and Robert Altman's wife, who's a sweetheart, brings us a couple drinks and tells us that there's a refrigerator behind you. Please help yourself, in which the fridge is loaded up with beer. I'm not a drinker at all, so at that time I just kept with water, and my friend Corey started having a beer. And about 20, 30 minutes goes on, and Dana and Robert Altman's wife are talking, and I'm noticing that Robert's nowhere to be found, but Dana's not asking about him either. And I'm thinking, does Dana know that he's going to be late, or what's going on? He must be somewhere in the city, and he's going to show back up at some point. So we chill out another 10, 15 minutes, and Dana comes out and sits on the couch and just kind of looks at us like, hey, what's going on, guys? And we just kind of look back at him, don't really say much, and it's quiet. And we're sitting there in dead silence. And Robert's wife is sitting in the kitchen, and Dana's sitting there, and I'm sitting next to Corey, who's just sucking down beers, not saying a word. I'm like, okay, where's Robert? Then all of a sudden, straight out of a Tarantino flick, there's these stairs that are all white, and they're wooden, and they're on these like metal bars, so you can see through the stairs from the back. They come from the upper floor all the way down, and I see in all black, just jet black, this Japanese silk, like jet black kimono type outfit is on Robert. And Robert comes slowly walking down the stairs, just every footstep's like almost in slow motion, just douche, douche, douche. And I feel like Godzilla was entering the room. And Robert comes down slowly, and Dana gets up right away and welcomes Robert with a hug. And he introduces us to Robert, who walks over, looks at us, just nods his head, and sits down. And right away, as though we're not there, Robert and Dana start talking about some internal conflict. And this fight breaks out between them. Like a verbal fight about really personal family stuff just breaks out right there between Dana and Robert. And I'm looking at Corey, who's completely nervous. And Corey just finishes his beer and gets up and walks over and grabs another one. So I get up off the couch because they're fighting, and I go up to Corey and I go, dude, let's just step out on this back balcony. Because there's a balcony that overlooks the ocean. I go, being around this family fighting shit is just so awkward. Let's just go stand outside. And he's like, okay. So we go outside, we shut the door, and through the glass we can hear them fighting. And it just goes on and on and on. You look back at just this stunning white room with everything that's white, Robert's wife sitting in the kitchen, and Dana and Robert just going at it. I'm like, man, I hope they stop fighting soon. I want to talk to Robert, you know? So then I hear a doorbell, and a bunch of Robert's sons and their wives and kids and everybody's over, and I guess they're coming over to eat dinner. Now, if you know anything about the Altman family, everybody works for Robert. So when Robert does a film, he hires the whole family, and part of his beef with Dana had something to do with that. I don't want to comment on that too much because, again, that was personal stuff. But what was really weird is Dana and Robert stopped fighting, and Robert was sitting in his chair, and everybody that's in his family lined up, like in a line, like you do at elementary school, like when you all get in a line. And they each walked up to give Robert a hug and a kiss, hello. But they did it in a line, almost like it was military. Like each person had to do it right then. And I'm like, God, this is strange. Isn't this strange? You know, I'm like, this is just so strange. Nothing wrong with it, just so different. So that happens, and then shortly after, dinner is done. And it was an amazing dinner, by the way. Robert's wife made an incredible dinner, but nobody at dinner is talking. Everyone is just sitting there kind of quiet, and I'm wondering if I should say something or not say something, and so I'm just following the lead. But then Robert would say something, and then everybody would jump in and talk about that topic until that topic was hashed out, and then it'd get quiet again. And then Robert would say something else, and everybody would talk about that topic until that topic got hashed out, and then it would get quiet again. It was just like, what is going on? This feels like the Twilight Zone. So right after dinner's done, Robert's wife says, would you like some ice cream? Which Robert says yes. So I'll never forget this. She gets out these Dove bars, Dove ice cream bars, and she goes around and she gives everybody a Dove ice cream bar. And I'm noticing that nobody is opening up their ice cream bars. They're waiting for Robert to eat his. And I'm thinking, you know, that's nice that they're waiting for him to kind of lead that. So he opens his ice cream bar, and then everybody opens their ice cream bars, and then everybody's sitting around a table eating Dove ice cream bars simultaneously. As Robert's eating his, he's taking off the wrappers and he's putting on the side, and a couple of his wrappers fell off the table onto the floor, in which Robert's wife just immediately fires over to grab those, grabs the wrappers, throws them right in the trash, runs back, gets a towel, runs over, and makes sure that that floor stays white. And nobody's acting like this is strange. Like what if she was eating? What if her wrapper hit the floor? You know, what if my wrapper hit the floor? Would she do that from, like, you know, it just seemed really demanding without him demanding, if that makes sense. I'm like, this is just so bizarre. So afterwards, we get done, and again, everybody's waiting for Robert to excuse himself from the table before they excuse themselves from the table. And he finally does, and he walks back upstairs and does something, and then comes back downstairs. And in the meantime, Corey and I just went back over and sat on the couch, in which Corey grabbed another beer. And at this point, he's pretty drunk, you know? And I look up, and I'm like, oh, God. And he's like, what? I go, dude, did you do that? He's like, what? And I'm like, look. And there's just this trail of mud and dirt all the way across everything that's white. I'm like, oh, my God. And I look down at my shoes, and thank God. I'm like, it's not my shoes. It's not my shoes. And then I look over at Corey's, and right as I do, he goes, fuck, dude. And I'm like, what? He's like, it's totally me. Well, after dinner, Corey thought we were leaving, and he put his shoes back on. And he was drunk, and he didn't realize after he put his shoes back on that we weren't leaving, so he didn't take them back off. He just went walking back into the house. And walking into the house, when we got there, he walked through mud and water to jump up on the stairway to get into the house. So we're like, oh, Jesus, what's going to happen? So Robert comes around the corner right away, right as I saw it, and immediately he trains on it. He sees it right away. And right away, he starts going, what is this? What is this? There's mud and dirt here. Whose is this? And I'm going, oh my God, oh my God. I just want to jump through the back window and swim in the ocean and swim back to LA. And Corey's sitting there, and there's this bowl of cashews that somebody had put out after dinner right on this table. And Corey slides his feet under the cashews. Like, that's going to help. Like, you can't draw the trail back to his feet. And Robert comes over and he sits down and he looks directly at Corey's shoes. And I'm like, oh my God, he is going to tear into us. And he looks Corey directly in the eyes. And Corey's like, oh my God. And he pauses. And Robert reaches over and grabs some cashews and doesn't say a word. I was like, what the? It was just very, very strange. But the night ended in a very cool way because we did get to speak with Robert for a little bit, about 4 or 5 minutes. And he talked to me about what I was doing with my first film, what was going on. And it was really cool. It was really cool. And we left, and Dana and Robert had a few words, a few choice words, and then we took off. But again, what I realized is he lived in a different world. He lived in a completely different world than anybody else that I knew lived in. In his world, everything started and stopped with him. Everything. Right down to when people ate, when they spoke, how they greeted him, when they ate ice cream. Everything in his world started, stopped, and ended with him. Which I've never heard of any scandal or anything like that Robert Altman was ever involved in. And I found Robert as a person, when we were talking, to be very pleasant. I have nothing bad to say about the family or anything. My point here being is just how different of a world it is that he lived in. So if you were unbalanced as a person, if you were a really negative person that had some really shitty things about you, in a world in which everything starts, stops, and ends with you, things can go bad really fast. I can see how these people would start to believe that they're God. That they can get out of anything, that everything in the world revolves around them, and no matter what they do, they're going to be okay because they're just that powerful. They're that talented. They're that special. But as we're seeing, they're not. Which is why the first promise I made to myself when I landed in this city is that I will never forget what it took to get here, because who you are is where you're from. That's why I have Iowa tattooed on my arm. And I swore to myself that at every level of success that I was fortunate enough to reach, I would take the time to judge myself. And my manager, Kurt, gave me a great piece of advice a long time ago when we were talking about this very subject. He said, if you ever want to judge yourself, judge the company you keep. Because more often than not, you're a reflection of them. And as I look around at the people that are on my team and the people that have worked with me for years, I'm happy to say that they are quick to knock me down when I become arrogant or cocky. But they're also the first ones to give me a hug and a high five when we accomplish something that we work so hard to accomplish. So if you're listening to this and you want to take a shot at making it in Hollywood or any other industry, just remember nothing is ever as good or as bad as you think it is. Find good people with common goals and write it out. Thank you for listening to episode number 19 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back tomorrow with more. All the best.